Let me take you through the steps of stripping a 6-pack Pro carrier to clean it or to do any repairs or replace anything in there. Step number 1. Your bridge lock bushing and die in station 4 needs to come out. Get that out of the way. Remove your index rod. Get that out of the way, then there won't be any movement on the shell plate. You can't jam up anything. Everything is nice there. Now, take your case ejector off. Take that off. Put it one side. Now we're going to remove our case feeder. So we're just going to undo that. And if you undo the bottom nut and you don't touch the top nut, you probably don't have to set it up again when you replace it. But it's always good to just look at it. To get that out of the way and to make sure that I don't lose that nut, I just put it back onto the bolt. So that's out of the way. Now we need to get this case slider off. So we remove the screw that holds the spring into it. Remember, it goes into the front hole on the 6-pack Pro and back hole on the Pro 1000. So get that screw and slider out of the way. And again, I just put the screw back into the slider just to not lose the damn thing. Okay, so that spring is now loose, so be wary about that spring there. I don't like to take them off here because they're a pain in the ass to get them back in there. Now I'm just going to lift the carrier a bit so that I get a little bit of play on the primer spring, and I remove the slider and guide, careful not to lose the guide. Okay, so that's, you got those 2 springs hanging here now, so just be careful of that when you are doing this. Now you have to remove the shell plate. So use the included Allen key that came with the press. This is metric, it's not imperial. If you're going to use imperial there, you are going to damage it. So now we're working this bolt from the bottom side, so we have to tighten to loosen. Okay, and then I'll turn it a little bit like that just to give it a go, and I'll take the press a little bit again, watch out for the springs, up and turn it off just like that. So there's your shell plate off. Now you have access to your top cover. Now we need to take our case retainers out of the way so that we can remove our retainer ring. Now this is only on the press for anything smaller than 40 Smith & Wesson. If you're loading bigger, you don't need to use this. Okay, so that's out of the way. Now if you look at the cover at the top, there's 2 Phillips head screws there. We are going to, using a stubby screwdriver because it's easier to get in there, and we are going to turn these little screws out. Screw number 1. Screw number 2. Do not lose these screws. Right, now moving the springs out of the way and making sure you're not damaging them. Lift the carrier almost to the top, because right here is the bottom covers screw here holding it on there. It's also a Phillips head. So, and watch this thing, it's just gonna fall out like that. Okay, there's that screw there. So keep them one side. Now slowly take the press to the bottom again, and you notice there that the bottom cover has fallen off and the top cover is now loose. So now we can just wedge the top cover out here a little bit without getting the springs in the way. Okay, so just to the bottom. Be careful now. See that index ball there. Do not lose that ball. So take it off and put it somewhere where it's not going to roll away from the desk or anything like that. And then we can just get our top cover out like that. Now you can go and you can clean the top cover. Look for all the powder or anything sitting in between here, especially here. Just give everything a nice clean to make sure there's nothing that will interfere with the function of a press. When you lube the press also, you can lube underneath here for your case slider. That will just help your case slider move nicely. Okay, and that's the bottom part of it. And you can see it's a metal part. It's a cast part. You can see the casting marks, the ejection ports. That's the top cover. So we just put that one side. Now, when you reach in here, you can take your primer pin and spring out. Again, do not lose this. This is the second generation self-cleaning primer pin. The newer presses has a gold pin, and there's a change to the carrier cover. So if you ever have to change this pin and you buy it from me, you have to get the gold pin and you have to buy a new carrier cover. So just note that. But I don't think there's any reason why you have to change that. So again, put that one side where it's not gonna run away. Then there's this spring here. So if we lift the press up now, the bottom cover will stay put. We can take that spring out, put it one side. Now your bottom cover is loose. There's your carrier core. This carrier core is tightened to this ram with a Allen bolt inside here. Do not attempt to remove the carrier core from the ram. That is fitted on there at the factory and it's perfectly aligned at the factory, and it takes precision to do that. So don't ever remove this. I had one case where it wasn't tightened properly at the factory. I did tighten it up for the customers. So far everything is good. I managed to line that press up perfectly. Okay, now the one thing that we didn't take out yet is our drive bolt. There's our drive bolt, driver clutch, driven clutch, and you can see mine has got quite a bit of grease in it. That's how I prefer to run it. So, and that's basically how you strip your carrier. Now, what you can do is, if you had some powder spillage or anything like that, it's going to sit on this plastic cover here. This cover, yes, you can take it out, but it's going to mean stripping the whole handle, removing the tool head, and then pulling the whole ram out because you can't remove that bolt there to get this out. But there's no need to do that. I don't see how you will ever damage this. You can see there's a space for the spring to sit on. So it fits back on there. So it secures the spring there. But just clean everything out there if there's any powder spillage or anything on there. So let's put everything back together. You're going to line your bottom cover almost 100% up like that. You are going to take your drive bolt with your two clutches together like that, and you are going to basically put it in the middle hole of the press like that, keeping it there, and then slowly going down. Okay, now we are going to take our index ball spring and we are going to fit it back on that little plastic nub there where it's supposed to sit there. Then we are going to take a primer pin with the spring on top like that, and we are going to place it in the little cover. There's a little spot in the bottom cover where it rests there. It's standing loose there, so you're going to have to line it up when you get back to the cover now. Now, the tricky part. Don't lose this ball. Okay, it just rests in there. Okay, now we're going to take our carrier cover that we've cleaned everything now, and we're going to wiggle it into the press like that. It's a bit of a trick to get it in here, but it's not that difficult. If I can do it, you can do it. So just keep the two springs out of the way, and we're going to slowly lower it down. And we are now fighting against those two springs. Okay, not those two springs, the primer pin spring and that spring. So everything is almost back together now. But now we have to secure the bottom cover first. So holding everything tight like that. You see how I'm holding it like that. Okay, we're going to take this long screw, we're going to go a little bit up, and we are going to start that screw there with our stubby screwdriver. Okay, we have to go a little bit more up, and we're just going to start it, securing the bottom cover to the top cover. Okay, now slowly go down again, watch your springs again. Okay, now making sure that everything is clearing and everything is lining up. Your drive port is free, your primer pin is clearing all the way there, it's not getting stuck there. Your indent ball is lined up, your indent ball, if you can see there, and this index pin is lined up. Now what you want to do is you want to take these two screws and get them back into the top cover, and we're going to start tightening it up. But there's something we have to do before we tighten them up all the way. So you can see I'm busy starting them up, and just hold the bottom cover to line everything up nicely. Then I'm going to move the press up, see what I see about these springs, and where the primer pin, this pin here that activates the primers here, that agitates the primer tray, needs to be in that little groove there. So we're just going to put a little bit of pressure there and keep it a little bit like that. So there's a little bit of pressure, you don't have to push it in there, and we're going to tighten the carrier, top cover and the bottom cover back up again. Okay, now you just want to see that everything is clearing, nothing is jamming up, and that primer pin, you see these springs, that primer pin is making contact with those grooves, and you can actually hear it as it goes down. Okay, so be careful when doing that. Just make sure you don't over tighten the carrier too much that way that you put too much pressure on there. It just must make contact. Okay, so now we can put our retainer ring back in. Easy fit that. Okay, now we can put our sharp plate back. But before we do our sharp plate, let's get rid of these two springs in our wide halter. Now, primer slider and guide back in. Okay, going a little bit up so that we can. Now when you are attaching the spring to the slider, make sure that the open end, well, with the new presses they got a small end and a bottom. This is the old spring. So if you still got the old spring, make sure that the open end is facing this way. It's facing you. Okay, so just get it back in there. Like that. And then making sure that the spring has tension like that. It's not lifting the slider in any way. And then when you go to the top, it sits flat. Okay, now we can get our slider back on. We're just going to remove that screw quick again. Okay, slider back on, spring as straight as possible, and with the screw facing like that into this front hole for the 6-pack Pro. And we're just going to turn it back in there. And when we turn it back, we want to turn it so that it secures the spring in place, and that the spring is flat when we go up and not touching the slider end here. It's clearing there. Okay, now we can close our case retainers and get our sharp plate back on. So to get the sharp plate back on, just lift the press a little bit. Tip when you are just make sure also it's nice and clean, there's no dust or anything there or anything, and make sure obviously that the stamped number is facing you. Okay, and now I can just turn it back on like that, just to get it going there. And then I'll go all the way to the bottom, and that will secure the shell plate in place, and we can just turn this a little bit more so that we can secure the shell plate back onto the press. So that everything clears there, and then we can turn the shell plate tight. Okay, you want it tight, so, but don't over tighten. You want to put pressure here so it doesn't work itself loose. Okay, so your shell plate is back on. Now when we're doing these types of things, let's just check everything is clearing, there's nothing is jamming up, everything is looking good. Now next step, case ejector clips on over there, goes into the hole there. Line up your case retainers, making sure they are holding the case retainer ring down. Now we can put our case feed bracket back on, and to do that, put it like that. Take a case, whatever you're loading, put it in there. I'm sorry you can't see this now. Just make sure that the feeder is a tiny bit above the case so that the case can clear the feeder, and it only needs to be a tiny bit. If it's too much, it will double feed. If it's too little, it's gonna jam up. So just look at how you put it back in. But like I said, when you took it off and you only moved the bottom nut, you should be okay. You shouldn't have to realign anything there. So let's just get it tighter and lined up. And just make sure the case and the slider releases, clears everything there. Okay, so we're basically almost back together now. Now we need to put our index rod back in. When you put your index rod back in, make sure your press is at the bottom, and then get it through the hole into there, line it up, and make sure it clears, leaves enough space for the breech lock bushing to go back in. And then we're going to put our breech lock bushing in station 4 back in. I currently have the inline bullet feeder there, and then we are just going to do a dry run to make sure everything is working as it should. Okay, quite easy. Alright, just note what you are doing. Don't force things. If something gets stuck, look. Don't lose the index ball. Yeah, just note what you are doing. Cool.